All right, well, hello and welcome. Hopefully you all can hear me. And there we go. I see some of our members. You are able to turn on your video if you would like. As you are aware, I'm Supervisor Palchik here, joined tonight by my team, as well as by our representatives from the Department of Public Works and Environmental Services. We have been working with you for over a year now, I believe, at this point, and I just want to thank everyone for joining us tonight. There we go, people coming in. Want to thank everyone for joining us tonight. I and my office are hosting this meeting, and we are joined by representatives from our office, as well as the community, and I see as well as Barbara Byron from the chairman's office, who has also been following this project. So I want to thank all of you. As you know, as you're probably aware, this is a project from the Department of Public Works and Environmental Services. My office and I have been following it and engaging with you and with Chris and Peter as the team over this past year to help ensure that there is mitigation to any impacts to the community, that we understand the history as well as the needs for this project, and that you have the ability to ask questions and participate in this discussion. So I want to thank those of you. Many of you, I think, have been involved for quite a bit of time now. Others might be coming in. And so we do really look forward to this presentation. So tonight, Peter and Chris will be presenting. We've asked them to come here tonight and present the latest updates to their project, as well as give some history of this project. And they will be taking questions from you. Just so you know, tonight's our primary form of communication and taking questions, and I see Devin is putting them into the chat. There are different technologies. I'm more used to Teams, so we're going to do our best. I think I still remember Zoom, but I know it's easier for many to use Zoom. So we will be asking you to please put your questions into the everyone chat. That is going to be the chat that we are monitoring. We will not be monitoring the individual chats. It gets a little bit too confusing sometimes if chats are going on in different windows. So we will ask everyone to please send your questions to the open chat window. We will primarily take questions through the chat so we can really make sure we get to everything. And then if there are any questions that require some follow-up, we will have them there and we'll be able to follow up with you. We will primarily take those questions, but we will also try to answer a few questions over the phone or video as time allows. Tonight, as I mentioned, and I know a few more people coming in, so I will repeat a little bit so we're all on the same page. Number one, a reminder, we will only be monitoring the chat that it says everyone. So that is where we ask you to send your questions to the everyone chat, and primarily we'll be taking questions through that chat, just to make sure we are able to respond to everyone's questions tonight or follow up as we need to. Well, I am the host of this meeting. It is a meeting of a project of the Department of Public Works and Environmental Services. And so I think I will hand it over now. There's the beeping seems to have stopped, so hopefully everyone is on who'll be joining us. And again, we will have a presentation from Peter Vigliotti, and followed by Peter and Chris, and followed by a Q&A. So preferably if you're able to hold on to your questions, but if you do have questions along the way, you can definitely send them once again into the everyone chat. That is the only chat that we are monitoring, just to ensure that we're able to get to everyone's questions. After Peter's very brief presentation and updates on the work they've been doing to help reduce and mitigate the impact of this project to the community, we will turn it back over to our team, who will be helping moderate the Q&A. And we expect to be closing out by around 8:20 and 8:30 tonight. So to that, it looks like those who are here have been able to join us, those who wanted to join. So I will turn it over to Peter and Chris.
Good evening, and thank you, Supervisor Palchik. I really appreciate you and the Providence District Office for calling this meeting and inviting us tonight. As Supervisor Palchik mentioned, the purpose of tonight's meeting is for the Department of Public Works to share the final design and construction timeline for our upcoming Hickory Hollow Road Improvement Project. My name is Chris Harrington. I am the Director of the Department of Public Works. I want you to hear the facts straight from us, since we're the ones who are managing the project and are responsible for this section of roadway. In just a moment, I'm going to pass the mic to Peter Vigliotti. He is the chief of our Transportation Assets branch here in the Department of Public Works, and he'll walk us through the final design now that it has been revised based on feedback we've received from the community. And as I mentioned, we'll also talk about the construction schedule. Before we start, I just want to reiterate again and be very clear with the objective of today's meeting. The decision to improve the stream crossing and the road beyond the stream crossing has been made. We have a final design informed by your input, and we're here tonight to give you a preview of what will happen and when we think it's going to happen. I say this because it's important to remember that there have been years of discussion leading us to this point in the project's life cycle. We've had ongoing conversations, including an on-site meeting that I attended and others that Peter has attended, meetings with some key stakeholders in the Providence District Office, and of course, lots of conversation and individual emails. You, the community, were very creative in identifying potential alternative options for the design, and I appreciate that. And we have diligently explored every suggestion. Your feedback, the community feedback, is what has led Public Works to change the design, our original design for the roadway, to what it is and what we're presenting tonight. Just to remind us again all that the project is entirely on existing county right-of-way, so there is no taking of private land. The project has no impact on Ashland Park. We have no interest or plans to pave anything in the parkland. The project does and will comply with all applicable county, state, and federal regulations. Access to private property and the park will be maintained through the construction process. The project is already fully funded. No approval from Supervisor Palchik is required, nor is there any requirement or existing process even to hold a public hearing before the Board of Supervisors for this specific project to proceed. This is one of the very few miles of roadway that is actually owned and maintained directly by the county. The majority of our roadway, the overwhelming majority of our roadways here in Fairfax County are actually owned and maintained by the Virginia Department of Transportation, VDOT. The current stream crossing on Hickory Hollow Road does not meet current code. It's unstable and it's failing, and it must be improved. When we upgrade the stream crossing, it also requires us to upgrade part of the road north of the stream crossing to also bring it up to current standards. I know some of you are unhappy about these changes and would certainly prefer to maintain what you perceive to be rural character of the road as it exists today. And as a human being, I totally get that, right? But I have an obligation to ensure public safety and comply with the applicable regulations, and those are what's driving the project. We've heard your concerns. We modified our design to use the most narrow, minimal design standard available to limit the impact of the road improvement as much as is possible. Even though it's not a VDOT road, we're required to follow VDOT road design standards by county code. And again, at your suggestion, we're using the most narrow design available within the limits of the applicable regulations. As Supervisor Palchik mentioned, just logistically, if you have questions, please put them in the chat and we'll certainly get to them at the end of the meeting. And with that, Peter, I'm going to pass it to you. If you would please walk us through the project now, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you, Chris. Let me share screens. Okay, you should be able to see my the presentation.
Just 1 second, Peter, still processing maybe. We see it, Peter.
Okay, popped in. Awesome. Okay, we'll skip the title page. I'm Peter Vigliotti. Okay, the agenda is, we already did the introductions. We're going to talk about the objectives of the project. We'll discuss the project limits. We're going to talk a little bit about the existing conditions. Then we'll discuss the planned improvements. Then we'll talk about the status and schedule. And then lastly, we'll take questions as mentioned previously in the Everyone chat. The objectives of this project is to provide safe access to the residential properties located north of Rocky Branch. We also want to mitigate Rocky Branch from overtopping the roadway, like keep the stream from overtopping the roadway. We also want to mitigate sediment contamination of Rocky Branch downstream from Hickory Hollow Lane. And we want to prevent erosion damage to the roadway that has occurred previously. This is an overview, an aerial view of the project limits. Down here, if you can see my cursor, is the cul-de-sac. We begin construction at the cul-de-sac. Prior to the cul-de-sac is owned by VDOT. We extend up to the driveway at about 2600 Hickory Hollow Lane. That's the approximate end location of the project. You can see right here is where the Rocky Branch stream crosses Hickory Hollow Lane. The existing conditions, this photo was taken back in November 2018, so this photo is about 5 years old. Hickory Hollow we require constant maintenance or continuous maintenance due to the undersized culvert. The water would overtop the roadway pavement, damage the pavement, and cause erosion of the roadway. And then also it would damage the pavement and cause potholes. Here's another picture of the roadway. Same time it was taken in November 2018. You can see how severely eroded the roadway is after Rocky Branch overtopped the roadway. You can even see debris piled up down here. And you can see the rock slope protection or riprap got pushed downstream by the force of the water. Here's another picture of the roadway showing how badly eroded the roadway is. Looks like about 32 inches of pavement around that pipe has been paved on our road, and the drop off is about 6 feet. So that's pretty severe. Matter of fact, this was the first project I looked at when I assumed this position as branch chief. So this is why we had to do this work on this roadway. This is a typical section of the roadway. This is modified from the original typical section. The roadway at the stream crossing will consist of 16-foot paved section, 2 8-foot lanes. The shoulders on the left and right hand side will be 7.5 feet wide, and then we'll have guardrail. Beyond the north of the Rocky Branch stream, we're going to maintain the 16-foot paved section of roadway. We're going to reduce the shoulder width to 2-foot gravel shoulders on each side, and then we're going to put in 8-foot drainage swales. And those are grass drainage swales that will grow grass over time. So planned improvements include the following. We're going to construct 4 box culverts. The length of the box culverts is about 50 feet. 2 of the box culverts have a 10-foot width and a 6-foot height, and 2 additional box culverts have a 6-foot width and a 4-foot height. The smaller box culverts are outside the larger box culverts. And that, as we mentioned before, the roadway from the cul-de-sac to the North Stream embankment will be 16 feet wide with 7.5-foot shoulders. From the North Stream embankment to the driveway at 2600 Hickory Hollow Lane, the roadway will still be 16 feet wide with 2-foot shoulders on each side and 8-foot grass drainage swales on each side. We're also going to install guardrail at the stream crossing. As part of this project, we're going to remove about 60 trees. This includes about 24 trees located north of the stream embankment, north of the Rocky Branch stream. When you finish up the project, we're going to plant 8 trees and 24 shrubs adjacent to the roadway north of Rocky Branch to try to regenerate some of the vegetation. And as Chris mentioned previously, the completed project will be within the dedicated roadway. The schedule and pending, there's an existing utility pole. Actually, this utility pole was in the way of construction. It was removed last week, so that's out of the way. At this point, we're still waiting for a nationwide permit from the Army Corps of Engineers. Once we receive the permit, construction will commence about 4 months after receiving the permit. The duration of construction is 3 to 6 months. The engineer's estimate to perform this project is about $1.5 million. Of that $1.5 million, $250,000 will be spent to reconstruct the roadway north of the Rocky Branch stream. And as mentioned previously, access to Hickory Hollow Lane will be provided at all times to all the residents and visitors during construction operations. So that concludes the presentation. As mentioned previously, all questions we'd like to have all questions come to everyone in chat. And I'll turn it back over to Chris.
Thank you very much, Peter. I appreciate that. Again, I know folks have been unhappy about the change that's been proposed to the roadway. We are following the most narrow standard, the standard actually suggested by some of you. It's the GS9 service road standard, based on the feedback that we've received. And so for some of you that have been following along, that means narrower travel lanes than what was previously proposed, and narrower shoulders. The stream crossing has to be upgraded. I think, as you've seen, even if it doesn't look like that in its current condition, based on my site visits, I can tell you that it is not stable, and it certainly is not compliant with current code, both in terms of its conveyance capacity, in terms of the floodwaters that the road can pass, as well as the width and the design and the current configuration of the road. So it's not in a stable condition, which is why I don't believe that it is safe and is what is necessitating the project. Because we're touching the stream crossing and we're upgrading it to current code, we have to upgrade the roadway beyond. As Peter mentioned, we've showed you those plans. We're not taking any private land. We're not impacting parkland, and we will maintain access during the construction. And so first, I want to say thanks to everyone for all the great suggestions that you shared. They did directly inform the design, as we've commented on today. You probably have some additional questions. It looks like we've gotten maybe a few in the chat. And so with that, we're happy to return the microphone back to Supervisor Palchik and her team in the Providence District Office in case she has any questions or if she'd like to facilitate for us.
Well, first of all, thank you so much, Chris and Peter, both for your attention to this project. And as was mentioned, since we've begun the meetings with the community members, both the two homes that directly use this road for access, as well as the larger community that has been a part of this area, and I know very much enjoys, as we do, the ability to walk, bike, run, and roll and drive through this area. So again, thank you for your attention to this. I know we have a few questions. We've had a necessary last minute change on our team. So I appreciate that Devin, who I think most of you have met, our Deputy Chief of Staff here in the Providence office, will be helping facilitate the Q&A. And I appreciate those of you who are sending them in. I do see we have all the Q&A questions in the main chat. So just one more reminder, those of you who have questions, we do ask that you send them to the everyone chats so that we can be sure that they are read and responded to in question. And so to that, I will turn it over to Devin.
Okay, thank you much. Can you all hear me all right? I'm going to do my best to read the questions as they're written. If I make a mistake or if I place the wrong emphasis, please forgive me, and you can go ahead and repeat later. I'll try to correct myself. I also try to do this sequentially so that people don't have to wait too long to have their question answered in case they want to ask a follow-up. So I'm going to start with the first one that came in during the presentation. The question is, what VDOT road standard was decided on?
We're using the VDOT road standard GS-9, which is a service road type standard.
Understood. Okay, if that's sufficient, hopefully that person will be satisfied, but they can certainly ask a follow-up question. I'll try to connect that later on. A second question was, in what way is safety an issue beside the improvement of stream flow and integrity of the roadbed?
The issue,
you're muted, Chris, if you were going to answer that for us.
Thank you. Sorry about that. The roadway is not, the current design of the roadway doesn't meet current code. It's too narrow. There's not guardrails. It's unstable on both sides. And it doesn't meet current code with respect to the ability to convey floodwaters underneath the road.
Fair enough. Third question that we had in this chat, and I'm going to stop the sequencing because, well, I think we all know there's questions. This is really more of a statement. The downstream side of the road is a lot different from your 2018 pictures. Could one of you perhaps address that concern?
yeah, what we did is, and after we saw how bad the road was eroded in 2018, we went out there and we actually repaired the damage as a result of the road water over top of the roadway. That includes restoring the riprap, the rock slope protection, putting some more pavement down there, widen the road a little bit so we don't have that major drop off. So right after we saw how bad that road was damaged, we went out there and implemented temporary repairs.
Okay, so the difference in the pictures is basically that repairs were made following those photos being taken.
Correct, yes.
Okay. Next question. What is the status of the county obtaining temporary easements along Hickory Hollow Lane in order to move forward with this specific project?
We no longer need a temporary easement from Mr. Repesky's property because we reduced the width of the lanes and the shoulder widths.
The new design is entirely, and it was entirely on county right, existing county right of way. So no easements are necessary.
Right. Moving along. Question is about the drainage swales. Can trees be planted in the 8-foot grass drainage swales?
No, we put the trees outside the swale. That will impede the flow of water.
And actually, there was a mention of this, and perhaps this is a good time to do it. One of the individuals asked if we could put one of the slides back up. And this actually has to do with the drainage swales. I think they were asking for that cross section, Peter.
Sure.
I don't know if that's convenient for everybody, but I think if we go ahead and continue to share that presentation, it'll give more of a reference point.
Okay, should we popping up?
We see it, Peter. It looks good.
Okay, awesome.
And I believe that the request was about the swales which are located to the left and right of this cross section.
Let's see.
And those need to remain clear is what you said.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
To not impede the flow of water.
Okay. I am going to skip some of the comments because I want to make sure we get to people's questions. So, forgive me if there is you want to rephrase, go ahead and do so. One person did want to ask for a repetition of the specs planned for the road north of the stream crossing. I believe that's actually the request that we have for this particular slide.
Okay, yes, the road will be 16 feet wide. It will consist of, the paved road will be 16 feet wide. It will consist of 2 8-foot shoulders. Adjacent to the road will be, 8-foot lanes,
travel lanes, yeah.
8-foot travel lanes. Adjacent to the road will be 2-foot shoulders. We're going to transition from 7.5 feet to 2 feet, probably about 50 feet. And those will be gravel shoulders. And then adjacent to the gravel shoulders, we'll have the 8-foot drainage swales, grass drainage swales. Does that answer the question?
So we do have someone who's asked to follow up. So it seems that the answers are fairly good. The question from another individual: why do so many trees, 60, have to be taken down? And why aren't you planning more to replace them?
60 trees is total. The trees for the project. We're taking 24 trees down north of the embankment, and they're just in the way of construction. We got to remove them. And we can only plant enough trees to facilitate the vegetation. That's what we felt was the best option, to plant the 8 trees and the shrubs.
Understood. Next question is a little bit more detailed, and you may need to move to another slide. It looks like the 100 feet approximately from Repetsky's driveway at 2600 Hickory Hollow to Ms. Moyer's driveway remains untouched. Why is this remaining section of the roadway untouched?
We decided not to, and this was done before my time, it was decided not to impact the roadway beyond Mr. Repesky's property, being that it's only one driveway.
So essentially the arrow where it indicates end construction is the terminus, and what will be the status of the road beyond that? Will it just remain as is?
Remain as is, correct.
Okay.
We'll probably go a little bit beyond this arrow, probably to this area right here.
Another resident asked a question, and I'm hoping that this is a term that you're all familiar with. Has there been any NEPA review of this project, NEPA?
No, this is not subject to NEPA compliance. There's no federal nexus.
Could you explain a little bit more about what that question is regarding, Chris, in case it impacts other people's questions?
I'm assuming that they're asking if the project necessitates an environmental assessment under the National Environmental Policy Act, and it does not.
Okay. Super, I appreciate that. Next question. Is there a structural engineer's report concerning the current culvert?
The culverts were designed by an engineer, if that's what I mean, and we follow VDOT standards when we design the culverts.
But Peter, the existing culverts are undersized. I think there may be a question about the condition of the current culverts.
Oh, I'm sorry, I misunderstood the question. I'm sorry. No, we didn't look at the existing culverts because they're undersized. We know we have to replace the culverts.
Another more technical question. Does the GS9 standard reflect the more narrow roadway that is now planned versus the GS4 standard that was reported earlier?
Yes, it does. Yes, it's more narrow criteria.
This one actually goes back to another question that was asked earlier. It has to do with the safety question that came up. In what way is safety an issue? And the question, the follow-up question is, in response to your response to my question, who has been injured? Codes typically allow maintenance of conditions as they were installed. If everything existing had to meet code, we'd break the bank, so to speak.
Let's break that into a couple pieces. Just because an accident or something bad hasn't happened doesn't mean that the road is not currently safe, or does not mean that the road is currently safe. We follow engineering best practices, engineering design standards, the county's public facility manual, the VDOT road design standards, because we've established that those are tried and true methods. I'm sorry, Devin, I lost the thread of the question. Could you say it one more time?
I'll repeat it again, because I think it was, it's an important discussion. In response to your response to my question, who has been injured? Codes typically allow maintenance of conditions as they were installed. If everything existing had to meet code, we'd break the bank, so to speak.
So because we're not replacing as is, because we're upgrading the road costing to create a stable, safe crossing and to bring it up to current code, that's what's triggering the action. So it would be illogical to replace the roadway as is, because why would we spend time and money to maintain a non-code compliant condition?
Thanks for that answer. Moving on so that we get to more of these questions. And by the way, everyone's doing great. Thank you very much. The questions are good. And as much as you feel I can convey what you're trying to say, go ahead and put it in the chat. I will do my best to read it as written. The next question is, how are you getting around the resource protection area, the county's tree protection plan, and the Chesapeake Bay preservation protections?
Being a roadway project, it's exempt from RPA requirements. And that's by code.
Yep.
Okay. Next question. What about easements on the south side of Hickory Hollow Lane that border property owned by the Lakeville Court HOA, aka Broy Hills Addition, to Lakeville Estates?
Those easements have been secured, yes. They're temporary easements.
Another question about more general about the project. Given competition for funding for road and pedestrian improvements, can you explain how this one has risen to the top? Especially, as I understand it, there have been very few safety issues manifested in recent decades.
Again, I don't think it's good public policy if we wait for accidents to happen before we try to bring non-compliant roadways up to standards. This is one of the few this is one of the few miles of roadway that are county responsibilities. We can look at it today and say that it does not meet current standards. As such, we would not judge it to be safe. So this is a priority for us to fix, to provide a stable stream crossing that will be there so that the property owners and folks visiting Ashlawn Park can maintain access and that road doesn't wash away, and that the nexus between the transition from the stream crossing that we will be improving to the roadway beyond complies with code and is safe.
I'm going to go on to the next question. Just give me a moment. I want to make sure I have this correct. Yeah. Will the county maintain the grass swales in perpetuity to ensure water slows as it drains downhill to the stream? Without maintenance, they will fill with debris and lose efficiency.
Yes, and we agree.
Next question. Somewhat long, but I want to make sure we get through it. And I'll be happy to repeat it for you if you need me to. Thanks for you using GS9. The explanation to pave and widen Hickory Hollow was because the adjacent roadway needed to be brought to code. Are we paving Hickory Hollow the entire approximately 900 feet? I assume we are. With that said, what would the code say if the road was not 900 feet, but rather 5 miles? Would the county be forced to pay for 5 miles? This question is pertinent because I assume the county wouldn't pave the 5 miles in this hypothetical. Using this logic, why could we not simply pave the road an arbitrary safe distance, let's say 50 feet? We all know that 5 or 6 cars only go down this road.
We're paving it to the point where, so we can't transition from a 2-lane bridge to a 1-way road. That would not be safe or code compliant. We're paving it to get to the access for the next property owner so that there's only one additional property owner beyond that. And so we believe that to be compliant with code and safe. So that's what's, I'm not going to reflect on the hypothetical, but I'll reflect on the specifics of this circumstance, which is that's why we've chosen that stopping point. And I believe it to be a logical terminus for the end of the project.
I want to break from my my sequence here. There was an individual who asked for a repetition. They're having a hard time hearing, and they just wanted to know if we could repeat the status of easements on the south side of Hickory Hollow Lane.
All the easements have been secured, have been obtained.
And hopefully that was audible. Maybe it's one of my
we're good. We're all good on easements. We don't need any additional easements beyond what we have, and the rest of the work is on existing county right-of-way.
Got it. Got it. All right. Let me move on to another question. This one actually refers back to something that was mentioned prior, and I think I understand what the person was referring to. The person asked, I would like to know why that decision was made. And if I recall, we were discussing finishing the rest of the road at the time.
Why the decision was made not to pave more of the road? Do you want us to pave more of the road? We've been hearing pretty clearly to minimize the impact. We've taken it to the logical termini of the road. And so we're trying to be as minimal and as least intrusive as possible.
And there's a follow-up to that. If the whole road is county maintained, the whole road should be brought up to standard regarding the section before 2550. Can you please reevaluate this?
If y'all are interested in us paving more of the road, let us know and we can look at it. That's not been what we've heard from the community from day one. So that seems like a new direction.
There is a request to go back again to the question about safety, which has come up twice. I'll read the response. With all due respect, you did not answer my question. Is there a computer-generated view of what these improvements will look like once completed? And again, this is regarding the question about safety and if someone has been injured and what causes us to, as a county, to review this project versus another.
The plan, the view that Peter showed in profile is a good representation of what the road will look like. We don't have something that would be more graphically, a different graphical representation.
right, next question I have here. You originally told us that the whole road needed to be brought to code, and now you're only bringing only part of the road up to code, just to the first house, and neglecting the rest of the road to the second resident. How do you justify the project for safety and not address the entire road?
I feel like we've answered that question in the sense that we're taking the road to a place where there are not necessarily, or they're not by definition, two cars traveling on it in the same place. So I think it's, to me, this is a logical end of the road improvements that we can be comfortable with within our ethics as professional engineers and believe that it is code compliant. The safety issue is primarily concentrated around the stream crossing and then where the stream crossing joins the road at the edge of the stream crossing. And so that's what we're trying to navigate.
Take a moment here and just get myself organized so I can make sure I'm connecting these to the previous comments. This particular question is a little bit perhaps beyond the scope of the meeting here, but the February 3rd, 2023 county synopsis asserts cost for 28 maintenance actions of $67,000 over the past 10 years. Please estimate maintenance cost after the proposed improvements have been performed. Clearly, costs will not evaporate to zero.
We don't have that information tonight. We can provide it later and post it on the project website.
And I think that that's actually something I should mention. If perhaps one of my compatriots, while I'm compiling questions, could put in the chat the project website, that might provide some more technical details for those who are interested in that sort of stuff. Question, if a Federal Army Corps of Engineers permit is required, why is no NEPA review required?
The coverage for the Army Corps is under existing nationwide permits. So the NEPA review already was performed by the Corps when they issued the nationwide permit.
Thank you. Next question, where is this project in terms of permitting?
The permitting process is, the only permit we need is one from the Army Corps of Engineers, nationwide permit, and we're waiting for that permit.
Another question regarding the easements. How did you obtain the easements on the south side of Hickory Hollow Lane? Were they obtained in conjunction with the stream rehab project that is now in stage 1 in Ashlawn Park?
The easements for both the stream restoration project and Hickory Hollow were obtained at the same time, yes.
Next question. And I do want to emphasize that I'm doing my best to answer the questions first. I know that there are statements being made, but it's not necessarily something that Chris or Peter can respond to. So if you'd like to rephrase, please do so. I'm happy to present that to them. The question here is this project related to or as a result of the upstream Rocky Branch stream restoration project on Lakeville Estates currently planned by the county stormwater division?
They're effectively separate projects. So they're both being done by the Department of Public Works, but they're separate projects.
This is sort of a two-part question. One, will the slides be provided? Yes, of course. That will be on the website. The second part of the question is, I didn't understand why there are different swale sizes on the lower part of the road.
So that may be, Peter, there's a difference in requirements for the stream crossing shoulders and the roadway shoulders and drainage ditches, right?
Yeah, there's actually no swales at the crossing. Yeah, I don't follow that question.
There's guardrails.
There's going to be guardrail at the stream crossing, yes, and there's a wider shoulder. There's a 7.5-foot shoulder there. If the question asking about the 7.5-foot shoulder, that's required as a clear zone. We need 7.5 feet before I could put the guardrail up. I believe that might be the question.
So the road profile is different for the stream crossing and the road itself because they're different design standards that we're following, right?
Yes, yes.
I had a person who raised a question earlier, and they raised a point earlier, and they have rephrased it. I think so that I can better see that there is a question. It said, if the county decided to terminate at John's property, it proves the decision was not code-based. Why didn't the county decide to stop the paving further south?
Because then you'd have two driveways accessing an unimproved one-lane roadway, as is the current situation.
Hopefully that better addresses the question. Let me get back to some of the others that were present. Is there any way to avoid the 8-foot swales on both sides?
We looked at that. That was a previous suggestion that we had received, and no, there is not.
Is there a slide that shows the existing conditions in contrast to the project proposed conditions?
No, we don't have a slide showing existing. We just got the photographs.
Hopefully, those are illustrative of the issues. Thank you, Peter. Another question for you. Why haven't you even considered the diagram from VDOT's own manual, bridge replacement project on existing alignment, decreased bridge length with or without widening, that being the title of the manual?
I'm not sure I understand the question, but we can say we're following the VDOT design standards.
Yeah, I think that the question was, have you looked at the manual titled Bridge Replacement Project on Existing Alignment, Decreased Bridge Length, with or without widening? And it's or consider the diagram, excuse me, maybe not the manual itself.
Yeah, I'm not
We'd have
following.
to, yeah, we'll have to look into that one in a little bit more detail. Sorry, we'll have to pull it up to figure out what is actually being referred to.
Sure. Let me make sure I'm not skipping anyone. Apologies if I have.
While you're looking, Devin, just as a comment,
Yes.
again, the critical component here is we would not replace in kind. So there are allowances if you're able to replace a non-compliant bridge in kind. That is not an option for us here. So because we must improve, we must improve the stream crossing to bring it to current code.
Got it. Okay. Next question for you. And again, thank you both for taking the time to answer these.
Of course.
Is this project required before the upstream Rocky Branch restoration through Lakeville Estates may proceed?
No, they're proceeding on independent timelines.
Another question, partly answered earlier, but I think it's important to answer this. Are you still planning to build a retaining wall on the west side of the roadway along Rapetsky's pasture?
No. Sorry, Peter, go ahead.
No.
Because we were able to narrow the road using a different VDOT design standard, it no longer required the temporary access easement to construct the retaining wall, or it no longer required temporary access easement to avoid the retaining wall, nor do we need to construct the retaining wall because we have enough room, we can manage the grade per the spec now. So no retaining wall.
No retaining wall. Got it. I think I'm skipping one, but let me go back to it. How does this affect the entrance to the road to the dam across Mott's Pond?
It'll connect back to current grade. So it should, right, Peter?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there'll still be access.
Yes.
And I did skip one. I apologize. Let me go back to that. Have you accounted for the fact that paving a wider area and removing vegetation will increase runoff and speed up erosion in the maintenance cost estimates following construction?
I would argue there's significant erosion already occurring there, and we've shown you pictures of it in the past. That road, even if it isn't concrete or asphalt, effectively functions as existing impervious cover. So we have accounted for the change in runoff in the design of the roadway. That's some of the hydraulic calculations Peter referenced that are driving the need for the shoulders, consistent with the standard, and that we will maintain to maintain flow. But we're not having any adverse impacts on flooding.
Next question has to do with the replacement trees. How large or tall will the 8 replacement trees be? Anything less than 10 feet doesn't address the views from removing 60 trees.
Peter, you can speak to the specifics of the trees, but keep in mind the larger the tree that you plant, the less likely it is to be successful in the long run. So planting younger trees are increased survivability, and actually they even grow faster because they tend to be less root bound. But Peter, do you want to speak to the size of what we have in spec?
The trees where we specify is by gallon. Caliber, so they're actually, I'm sorry, caliber. So they're 3/4 inch caliber trees that we're gonna put in. We don't have the height per se.
We can find that information. It may be variable based on, because based on the species.
And not gonna be 10 feet because they gotta be delivered there and installed, so they will grow.
Correct. We can make sure we share the planting plan on the project website for folks to see.
There are some comments here that I want to try to summarize, and forgive me for if I make a mistake and kind of oversimplify them. But I want to make sure that these individuals have their kind of voices heard. I just don't know if there's a way for you to respond to them as is. The first question is really about the paving. First statement is really about the paving. And I think the question is, why did we choose to go ahead and pave to the end of the first house's property, essentially, the Repetskis? If we can choose to stop there, why are we not able to choose closer to the bridge? Or in the case of the previous question, why are we not able to choose to pave further and cover both houses? Maybe could you speak a little bit more about that decision process, or at least talk about, what was the process by which we arrived at this particular solution right now?
There are 2 driveways accessing it, so that creates the potential that you would have cars traveling in opposite directions at the same time. So it's logical that we would have a 2-lane road to the point where then there's only one way, one car travel. So that's why we're saying we've made a decision to be as minimal as possible, and that's the safest stopping place.
And the other one is, it's a question, although, and I appreciate the person phrasing it this way, although I can kind of get a sense for what they're getting at. The comment is, with 3 houses on this road, what are the statistical chances that 2 drivers actually are using the road at the same time?
That's not how we design roads.
Right, and I thought that might be pretty much the answer. There is another question going back to Peter's comment about the trees. Although I have a feeling this may be outside of anything you can answer right now. What is the expected maturation rate of smaller, admittedly more resilient trees?
No idea is the short answer. We recognize, right, that it's going to look different than it does now. We're not arguing that. We're planting trees at an appropriate spacing informed by our good friends in the Urban Forest Management Division, which is inside of Public Works. And so we've come up with a code compliant, reasonable planting plan, but it's going to take a while for some, for those trees to grow.
Fair enough. I mean, if you have species, perhaps info, maybe I can comment that might be helpful to provide on the website as well.
Understood.
I know there was some questions that we had further back in the process several months ago, and that can sometimes answer those questions. People will know that this species will grow faster than that species. There is a question here that I think speaks to sort of the process that we've gone through. Did the county ask the 2 citizens how often they have issues driving by each other. I believe that what they're trying to get at is, did we engage with these two residents regarding their use of the road?
Yeah, absolutely. We have, and there's been much engagement also from our good friends in the Providence District Office, I think, with both parties. I've certainly seen lots of threads of communication. And again, no, that's not how we design roads.
Another question I think that we kind of already addressed just a moment ago, will the replacement trees include sycamores and or hardwoods, oaks and hickory? I think that may be something that we can answer perhaps later on the website. I don't know if those have been selected yet.
Yeah, actually, we got the trees selected. They're going to be red bud trees and flowering dogwood trees. And those are on the plan sheets that we could share.
Apologies again, I did miss one. And the question is the same contractor doing all the work for the Ashlawn Park, Hickory Hollow, and Lakevale Estates stream restorations projects?
No, sorry.
So they will be different contractors.
I don't.
Most likely, yes.
Yes, yeah, in all probability.
Let's see, a couple comments. I think one comment got cut off before the person was able to finish it, so I want to make sure that they can go back. That's from Mr. Greenwood. Has there been a traffic count device placed on the road to determine the amount of two-way traffic?
No.
Go ahead, Peter. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, we didn't do it because we design criteria that we're using is for 0 to 400 vehicles. Then we know the ranges within 400 vehicles.
That 400 vehicles would not be exceeded, and therefore
For the original design standard, but the GS9 standard is independent of vehicle count. So it's not, but to Peter's point, it's not necessary. We acknowledge traffic on the road is very light.
Let's see. This is kind of, yeah, I think that the following question was kind of answered with that previous answer, but let me give you the question in case you want to elaborate, just so that this individual can feel like it's being addressed, because there's a couple of questions about traffic. The question is, why did you use a 48 vehicles per day for the road and refuse to do a traffic analysis?
Any number under the original design standard that we were using the lowest traffic count, so 0 up to a certain number. We knew that it was nowhere near the upper limit of the number, but we were using the lowest traffic count design. We've shifted to an even more minimal standard in the service road standard, the GS9 standard, and then that's not dependent on vehicle counts. I don't know if I'm.
And also the 48 numbers is, the 48 count is from VDOT for what they have for Hickory Hollow Lane. So we had to put a number in there, so that's where that number came from.
Thank you, Peter. Sorry, I was missing that piece.
Thank you. I appreciate you, continuing to address that. And that's kind of what I think this is really about. So, please bear with me. Don't be frustrated. I do appreciate that Mr. Greenwood came back and clarified, and I think I can phrase what his concern is. His full comment was, in my own experience with Fairfax County urban forestry, I'm not impressed. I could send Fairfax County a bill for all the plantings I'd have had to remove due to natural competition over 20 years. I guess the question is, it goes back to keeping track of the swales. Is there a method by which Fairfax goes back and checks on these trees? Will that be something that that DPW or urban forestry will be able to do if a tree, is damaged? What's the process?
Do you want to speak to any warranty period we have associated with this, and then our ongoing maintenance regime?
Yeah, usually with the trees, we have a plant establishment period of about 1 year once it develops. And then after the year, usually the tree pretty much grows on its own, especially given the nature of where it's located. Maintenance of trees, yes, trees are going to die, trees are going to fall down, trees are going to get hit by vehicles. And when that happens, we go out there and we, depending on the location, we'll replace it or remove it. Does that answer the question?
I feel like, that's at least an understanding. I did want to also ask that individual that if they have issues with anything that was planted previously, they're certainly welcome to reach out to the supervisor's office. Or of course, Chris and Peter are here. And if it's something to do with their department, we'd like to at least address that and figure out if there's a solution for you. There was a question here about trees that I'm just going to stick to, and then I'm going to go back to one just so the person doesn't think I'm missing it. The concern is that redbuds and dogwoods never get beyond 15 to 20 feet in height, nowhere near the 50-foot trees you're cutting down. I think the question is, when you're replacing these trees, will you be selecting trees that are comparable to those that are being removed? And if not, why not?
Yeah, working with urban forestry, we determined that these were the best trees to plant at this location. The redwood and the eastern redbud, or the dogwood and eastern redbud.
And so those are most likely to survive and thrive here?
Yes.
Question that I went past, are there paving options available other than a full impervious asphalt surface? A semi-pervious surface, as seen, for example, in Europe, could perhaps address some concerns.
No, that permeable pavement is not permitted under the Public Facilities Manual in this circumstance.
And this is a follow-up question, Chris. So maybe stay on the same subject in your mind. About 2 years ago, you did a semi-impervious partial paving of part of the roadway north of the creek. That had to have been the majority of the 67,000 cited in the fact sheet. Why not do the same soft paving, quote unquote, for the whole planned length?
I think it's a relatively, oh, go ahead, Peter, please.
What was done a couple of years ago after to repair the northern end of the road, we had to do it pretty quick, and we obtained some grindings, if you would, from another project to fill in the voids, fill in the potholes, and get the road in a somewhat stable condition. But it's not a durable type material. We prefer to use 2 inches of asphalt pavement, non-pervious material, so it's much more durable.
There's a question here, and I want to address this because I feel like it comes back to the supervisor and her staff, including myself. It basically says that the county arbitrarily chose the Repetskis' address. Could the county arbitrarily choose a location further south? I realize we're being dictated to here, but could Supervisor Palchik and the DPWES have a conversation to better represent the desires of the citizens in reducing the paving while meeting code and safety standards? Chris and Peter, maybe you can talk about the process. I've been party to several of the meetings myself, but maybe talk about some of what's happened over the past couple of years regarding this project and the interaction specifically between Supervisor Palchik and yourselves.
Peter, I'll start, and please add in if I miss or misstated anything. I mean, I would argue that the Providence District Office has been front and center in representing the desires of the community on this one throughout. And so all of the suggestions and questions that you've asked, we've been asked multiple times, I think, sometimes by the Supervisor Palchik and her staff and her team. And so I was being very serious when I appreciated the creativity and all of the different ideas and suggestions that y'all have offered. We've discussed that at length. We've had meetings on site with some of you that I recognize here today. We've had multiple email conversations. So we've modified the design in using a design standard that was actually suggested by members of the community. And it would be an atypical design standard for us to use in this circumstance. And so from my perspective, we have discussed this. We've explored all possible options at length. The initiating factor has been the stream crossing has been present far too long. So it's time for us to take an action. I think we've arrived at the minimal possible standard that we could apply in this circumstance, and we're ready to move forward. Peter, I know you've been involved in the project even longer than I have. Is there anything else on kind of the interaction or history you wanted to add?
No, you did it pretty well. We've been working on this project for about 5 years now. And we did meet with the residents prior to Chris being on board also, as Supervisor Palchik's office, to discuss the project.
Yeah, and I'm happy to add, I wanted to make, excuse me, I wanted to make sure, because Chris and Peter are clearly the engineers, and as this is their project, and well, prior to that was the previous directors and engineers projects, and I'm neither an engineer nor an urban forester, so I do want to make sure and understand that since our office and I have come into the project, as you know, we have met with you, we have met on site with the community, we met at my office with the neighbors, and I think, as was mentioned, there's been a lot of discussion here today, as was before, and looking at other possibilities, knowing that it has to meet safety standards, that they are the engineers, they have to sign off on it, and they have to feel comfortable that what they are proposing and designing meets safety standards, and not only is the county, but they are personally liable if it does not. And so I think that has to be very clear. But they did, as Chris mentioned, take the challenge when we said, and I said, please look at any feasible way. We know that there is not a lot of road traffic here. Please look at any feasible way, safe way, engineeringly sound and approved way in this area to be able to minimize that. And so I think what you heard tonight, and I really want to thank both the community members who have been advocating and helping ensure that we do revisit not the standard, I think that was originally proposed, which is what is normally, recommended to be used for this, but to be as creative as possible, and to be able to get down to the service road, even though this is not technically a service road, but that did help minimize the width and the impact using the GS9 standard. And so while I share your concerns and loss over the trees and the current feeling of it, we do know that the minimizing the impact and not having to go any wider than absolutely necessary while still maintaining those standards of you touch it, you have to bring it up to code, is being done here. So I really just want to thank everyone who's been involved in this for the past, I didn't even realize it was 5 years now, Peter, of this project. And while I can't speak to what was done before that, I can absolutely say that I have been very appreciative and proud of the work that Peter and Chris have done to really both be as flexible and creative as they can be as engineers, while being both thoughtful, responsible in the work that they do and in the way that they have responded and communicated with both you, the community, many times, either in person or via email. I know we've had many exchanges, and they've had many more than I have, back and forth with several of you in the email, and have absolutely taken every single recommendation into account and done what they are able to do with that. So I just want to thank them and you for that.
I do want to get to some of the other questions, and I want to I appreciate everybody taking the time to enter their thoughts in the chat. I am seeing it. I'm going to do my best to try to phrase these. In some cases, the questions have been answered, and I feel like some of the residents are indicating that they would like a little bit more detail, or they don't feel that their question has been addressed. So if some of these feel repetitive, maybe talk a little bit more about the answer that you gave prior. For example, one individual who was talking about the trees, they said it's not an issue of the trees falling down or being hit. They're concerned about natural competition, and they're concerned that Fairfax County urban forestry standards do not take into account growth and competition for sunlight. And they're not confident in the long-term result of the proposed plantings. I guess the question is, again, is there some sort of review process for the plantings? Is that part of what is looked at when staff go out to look at the roads?
The planting plan follows the specifications of the public facilities manual. Your point, I received your feedback. We can certainly discuss it with our friends in the Land Development Services Department that do tree review and our Urban Forest Management Division staff. I can't respond to that now, but I saw that chat and made a note of it, and so we can follow up.
Thank you. And I think that is important to note too. If I somehow butcher your question or, fail to convey what's going on, we're not only recording this, but everybody is able to see the chat on our side. So we'll go ahead and make notes, try to reach back out to you as well.
And sorry, Devin, let me just add personally, because I knew I absolutely share the concerns over any tree loss. We recently planted 50 trees to commemorate the 50 years and the actually 51% tree cover we've been able to achieve in the county. And I know we keep working on improving that. And so I will, I know that they have been working with the urban forestry team, and we have to make sure, this is one of many projects across the county, that within the scope of the project, that they have to, maintain certain standards that we use. But I'd be more than happy to, once this project is complete, to also bring out either our urban forestry team or some of the groups, the nonprofits they work with, and or Soil and Water, and come and walk with it personally and see what they see from the project and the trees planted. Some of you I know on this call are also experts, and happy to see if there are additional ways we can support it. I know the funds from this particular project cannot go beyond what's being proposed, but happy to review and see if there are other ways we can help improve the impact of the tree cover that will be lost.
I think that is important, that continuing effort, that this is not simply a project that will be completed and people will wash their hands of it. Just so everybody knows, what I'm going to do is I'm going to reiterate one more question, and then I'm also going to go back, cover a few more questions before I turn it back over to Director Harrington and Supervisor Palchik. The question that has come up a couple times, and I believe that you've answered it, but I think that the residents are a little unclear. Some individuals feel like it's not being answered. Others want to know more about why the road paving cannot be stopped further south or closer to the culvert. I guess maybe if you bring up the map as well, that might help illustrate the points that you're making. But maybe Chris or Peter, can you talk a little bit more about that, perhaps explaining a bit more about the process?
We don't want to create a condition where we have a 2-lane road transitioning into a 1-lane road where we have the potential for multiple cars traveling on it, right? And so that's why we have selected to go, and to me it's logical that we go beyond the end of the Rapetsky's driveway, such that there's only the driveway for the other property owner at that point. We're trying to balance the desires of the community to reduce tree removal and maintain as minimal of a road as possible. It would be illogical to start a road improvement to transition from the stream crossing and then stop a 2-lane road into a 1-lane unimproved dirt road before we've reached the first driveway. I'm not sure how to answer the question other than that.
Okay. Well, I appreciate it. There is actually a question related to that. It has to do with the trees. And it basically says, I applaud your effort to reduce the paved road width, but remain disappointed that you're still cutting down trees for the additional 20-foot gravel and swale needed. Won't 10 foot of gravel and swale on one side suffice?
No, and we actually looked at it, and it does not meet the necessary stormwater conveyance requirements.
And I think that answers another question, which was the swales on both sides implied a crowned roadway.
The roadway
Why can't the road be paved to allow runoff on one side?
It's the design standard and best practices. That is how the road will be designed. So we have to shed water on both sides. That's the amount of water that we have to convey. So it would just add a larger one. It would be, even if we were able to, it would just create a larger ditch on one side of the road than having the same size ditches on both sides of the road.
Okay. This kind of goes back to the point that Supervisor Palchik was making, but maybe if you can talk about perhaps your process a little bit more specifically. Does county staff plan to perform an after-action report to study mistakes made during project development? For instance, why the original wider road standard was selected when traffic demand shows it's not necessary.
The original design standard was the what we believe to be the most applicable rural local road standard for the project. We heard clearly from the community the desire to reduce it. So what we've selected is a service road standard. This is not technically a service road. It does, the service road, think about when you're at the shopping centers and you've got that road serving something off the main transit way. And so it's not a service road to Hunter Mill or anything like that. However, in consultation with our friends in the Department of Transportation, we identified that we would not be creating any unacceptable precedent by applying the service road standard here in Fairfax County for the portions of the right-of-way that we own and maintain. It meets the community goals. We believe it to be sufficiently safe given our understanding of the traffic on the road. So that was us being creative in response to the desire of the community.
And you probably can see it, Chris. There's some more detailed questions about that. It seems to me that it might be better to answer some of those offline, either in emails directly to the individuals or by posting it to the website. And to remind everybody, we will go ahead and add more information to the website so that everybody can review more technical details.
I see those, Devin, and we will. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, of course. A couple more quick questions. One was actually the second part of a request for a repeated question, but the question is, are there any design plans on the bridge and guardrails yet?
Yeah,
Yeah.
those plans are complete, yes.
Okay. And is that available on the website, Peter?
I believe they were, but we'll make sure they're on the website.
Okay. The other question is, nope, I've unfortunately lost it here. Sorry, the little things are hopping up here. I'll go with this one down at the bottom here. Just as you repaired the culvert 5 years ago, why can you not repair it again?
Because it doesn't solve the fundamental problem that the culvert is not stable and is undersized today. So that was a temporary repair. We're here to make the permanent fix.
Thank you. And I'm just going to give you one last question because I know this came up during one of our discussions and I think in a meeting with residents as well. And it's basically about signage. The question is, will several no outlet signs be put up since there's no place to turn around aside from Rapetsky's driveway?
Peter?
Yeah, we could put up a sign saying dead end at the cul-de-sac when the project is done.
And I also remember, and forgive me for going off script here, that there were some concerns about people parking along the side of this road. And they had asked for no parking signs. Is that a possibility? Did you look into that during the interim while we were waiting for plans?
What we could do is if we find a problem with people parking after construction is completed, we can install signs at that time. We don't want to put up a lot of signs that just kind of creates sign pollution, if you would. So if we find a problem later on, then we can address that at a later date.
Okay, and I think that's what I remember as well, is that you were concerned about the balancing the current look of the road with the improvements and wanted to make sure everything made sense. Oh, sorry, there's a follow-up. Would you put a no outlet sign at the top of Hickory Hollow, which I imagine would be where the VDOT portion? That might be a question for them.
Yeah, that's a VDOT question.
But we can ask.
And just as you said, no sign pollution is being requested by the residents. So anyway, thank you all. I appreciate your patience with me. Let me turn it back to Supervisor Palchik so that she can make any additional comments that she wanted to make.
Well, first of all, Devin, I want to absolutely thank you. I'm here trying to make sure we're keeping up with all the questions, and I think you've done an excellent job of making sure that we went through them. And want to thank you and Peter and Christopher for your work on those. I also really just want to thank the community. I do think that while this is not 100% the outcome everyone was looking for, because you have communicated with us, advocated, engaged with me, with my office, with the staff. As you can see, we did push our engineers to be as creative as they absolutely could be within their own engineering standards. And I also wanted to mention those of you who were in our, the two neighbors who were in our in-office meeting know that we did also bring in our FCDOT team. I think that was mentioned today, to be able to work together and to ensure that Peter and Chris could look at creative solutions that would not create new precedents, knowing that normally it is VDOT making all the shots, but when they are county roads, we have to ensure that we can be maybe a little bit more creative, but we have to be mindful of what that could mean for other areas. So again, really want to thank all of you. Appreciate that the majority of the impact is on the two homes who do use this road as their primary ingress and egress, and that ensuring that while there may not be 100% agreement on this, I do think that we now have the safest and the most minimal impact, and hopefully as we continue to work through this, and this was mentioned, once the project is finalized, that I'm more than happy to come over, bring on our urban forestry team, and make sure that we continue to engage and help with the impacts. In addition to that, as was mentioned, there is another project under DPWES that is also happening here. And so I can't remember if we have a project website for that one, Chris and Peter. We do, okay. And so we are more than happy to also send back out the website for both of those projects, so that you and the full community can continue to follow those. And so again, very much appreciate everyone's time, everyone's energy and patience. I think we've all learned a little bit more about road engineering, culverts, and stormwater than we probably ever wanted to know. But I do appreciate that we have learned quite a bit. And again, really want to thank especially the Rupetskis and Ms. Moyer for working with us and for working with the community and making sure that your voices, your concerns were heard and shared with us. So to that, Devin, Chris, and Peter, I want to make sure I haven't left anything else out.
Just
And
please
if there are any questions, sorry, and I did want to mention the good thing about having all the questions in the chat is if there were any questions that we were not able to answer, I don't know if that's where Chris was going, and I think we're getting some other comments here. If there's anything, absolutely, you know how to reach us, but if there's any questions that were still outstanding, and I think Chris was going to look at one more thing, we will also send those back out to the list. Go ahead, Chris.
Tomorrow's a county holiday, so if you would please just give us a little bit of grace to get the website updated, and we'll certainly let Supervisor Palchik and the Providence District Office team know, and then we'll communicate that out to folks when we've got that additional information posted to the web. So it'll be a few days, just FYI. But thank you everyone for attending. I appreciate it.
Perfect. Thank you all so much. And I see that Devin has just posted in the chat here. If you don't have it, the Hickory Hollow Lane Improvements Project website, which, as Chris mentioned, will be updated. I hope they get a little bit of sleep this weekend, and that will be updated with additional information. Okay, to that, please stay safe. enjoy the unusually warm weather, although it looks like we're getting some cold and rain tomorrow. Thank you again to everyone for your time and for sharing your evening with us, and have a good evening. Thank you.